Hello, Dr. Krätli. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, Dr. Krätli. Can you hear me?
I cannot hear you.
Oh, okay, but we can hear you. We can hear you.
Let me try this.
Hello, Dr. Krätli. Can you? Is it better now?
I cannot hear you. No. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Yes.
I cannot hear you.
Okay.
Other than that, no. We are ready to go.
Okay.
As long as people can hear me.
Dr. Krätli, can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can. Yes.
But
Can
I
you hear?
cannot hear you.
Okay. I am not sure what to do with this now.
All right, all right.
Am I audible?
Yes, Salma.
Yes, Salma. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the fifth talk on digital humanities, theory and practice. My name is Alma, and I will be officially introducing the speaker for today. Graziano Krätli is a translator, editor, author, and librarian at Yale University. He has published Italian translations of works by Rudyard Kipling, Edgar Allan Poe, James Hogg, Robert Lax, Native American and Indian poets, articles and essays on modern and contemporary Indian literature in English, and the material, technological, economic, and cultural aspects of book production, circulation, and preservation in West Africa. His publications include the collection of essays titled The Trans-Saharan Book Trade, Manuscript Culture, Arabic Literacy and Intellectual History in Muslim Africa, co-edited with Ghislaine Leiden 2010, as well as 3 books on Srinivas Rayaprol titled Why Should I Write a Poem Now? The Letters of Srinivas Rayaprol and William Carlos Williams, 1949 to 1958, published in 2018. Angular Desire, Selected Poems and Prose, co-edited with Vidyan Ravindran 2020, and more recently, Random Harvest, Selected Poems and Prose 2022. He is also a consultant for and a regular contributor to Indian Writing in English Online, an initiative of the English Department, University of Hyderabad. Over to Dr. Krätli now. Thank you.
Okay. So, welcome, everybody. I'm tempted to say good morning. If you were in London or Berlin or Paris, I would say good afternoon. But I'm afraid that I will have to say good evening because there is a significant distance and difference in time zone. But welcome anyway, and thank you for being up this late in the evening and being attentive and interested in this topic. I will quickly move to sharing my presentation, so you don't have to see me for the next hour or so, and especially this white background, which is actually the back wall of my office. I tried to switch to a background that shows one of our historic reading rooms, but it apparently didn't work. So rather than choosing one of the Google Meet options, I prefer just to leave the blank, even considering that we are switching to the presentation. So corpus building is not bodybuilding. The title will be clear in a second when we get to the definition. These are very first steps towards a digital humanities project. I have to, by way of disclosure, I have to say that I'm not a digital humanities specialist. I'm familiar with corpus building, but I'm more like an outsider or somebody whose research may lead to a possible digital humanities project, but has not gone that far so far. However, if we have time, I will mention at the end a project I'm currently working on that may have the potential or has the potential for a digital humanities project. Whether I will take it in that direction or not is a different story, but it will be a concrete example to show you in terms of a literary body what can be done. So this is the title of the workshop. So we'll skip on this. This is the abstract that I provided, and I will just read it for you, just to give you a sense of the context in which this presentation takes place. In digital literary studies, and we are talking about literary studies, or at least that's the focus of my presentation, a corpus is a collection of natively digital or digitized text. We'll see the difference between these two. These typically large bodies or collection of data are built and organized in ways that allow them to be queried, mined, analyzed, and visualized for meaningful quantitative or qualitative results. None of these forms of investigation are possible or even conceivable with text in traditional formats, such as manuscript or print, or also with digital surrogates or natively digital texts, unless they are gathered in a corpus and properly formatted. These are the stepping stones to virtually all digital humanities projects, of which corpus building represents the initial phase, foundational in its intent, and essential to any further steps. Basically, if you don't have a corpus, you cannot move towards the digital humanities project. Consequently, understanding what a corpus is, how it is built, and what can be done with it is crucial to a better comprehension and appreciation of digital humanities as a field, and of computational literary studies as a relevant and growing part of it. Now, when I say understanding and appreciation, I mean that there are still a lot of misunderstanding, especially in the academic field, especially in older scholars and faculty members. When you mention digital humanities, they think about digitizing and making available online text. This is not digital humanities. This is online presentation, conversion and online presentation of traditional text. Digital humanities project is a very different and much more complicated initiative. So basically, to be very broad and generic, a digital humanities project consists of three large stages, phases. One is the collection and organization of data. And that is what we are dealing with in this presentation, corpus building. These collections, these corpora, are the material on which you build your project. Without that, there is no project. Without any other kind of research in the humanities or even in the sciences, if you don't have the material, the data, there is no way, there is nothing to research. The second stage is querying and analyzing data with operations like data mining, social network analysis, etc. And the third phase is how you present these results. Typically, this has to do with data visualization, and there are many other ways to basically convert statistical data in ways that are more eloquent visually. The second and the third stage lie beyond the scope and the purpose of this presentation, so we will not get into that, also because other lectures in this series of workshops, I understand, are dealing with that, and also because I have no direct experience. So let's start with definitions. Corpus, the plural, corpora, and corpses. Interesting, the difference between a corpus and corpse is that one is alive, the other is dead, more or less. But what is even more interesting is that the word corpse in English has the same etymological origin as corpus, which is interesting because one is alive and the other is dead. So what is corpus? And moving from the material to the abstract and from the literal to the metaphorical, we have the body of a person or an animal. And then there is a body or complete collection of writings or the like, the whole body of literature on the subject. Let's say, in my case, in the case of my research, Indian poetry in English, post-colonial Indian poetry in English, the whole gathering of all the poetry collections, but also potentially critical works, biographical works, etc. That constitutes the corpus of post-colonial Indian poetry in English. The third definition, always from the Oxford English Dictionary, is the body of written or spoken material upon which a linguistic analysis is based. So you see, from the body, from the physical body to a metaphorical body, which is still has a physical component, even if maybe something that you can approach on a computer screen, then this body of literature or of text becomes the material upon which a linguistic analysis is based. Now you replace linguistic with literary, and that's the direction in which we are going. Much of what you're going to hear from me started in the field of linguistics, and then was adopted by literary studies. So linguistic analysis figures often, even though we are dealing with literature. So a literary corpus, consequently, is a large collection of written or spoken language. You can have a body of recordings of poets reading their work, like Pang Sound, for example, is a very good collection online of poets in the English language reading their work. That is used for studying the language, linguistics, or a large collection of text, such as collection of all writings, and these are three categories: by a particular author, for example, Shakespeare. In this sense, corpus is concerned with concrete manifestation of canon. The Shakespearean canon is represented by entire corpus of Shakespeare's work. Corpus is often in literary studies often used as a synonymous for canon. Is the whole gathering of the works that are officially recognized as works by a particular author. Or it can be a collection of text of a particular kind, genre, etc. It could be poetry, it could be essays, it could be something else. And then it could be a collection of texts in a particular literature. And examples, these are all if you have received or you will receive the PowerPoint. These are all active links. I'm not going to click on them, otherwise we're going to spend too much time. But these are all links of resources that are available online. And there are many more, of course. So now we get a couple of quotes. The first one is by Franco Moretti. Maybe you are familiar with Franco Moretti. Maybe you are very familiar with Franco Moretti. He is basically the scholar who has created the field of what is called computational literary studies or digital scholarship. And you remember his expression distant reading, which is a direct counterpart of the school of close reading, and distant reading is something that has to do not with individual text or group of text, but with large, very large amounts of text in converted in digital format. So a text is a communicative event written by someone in specific circumstances to convey a specific meaning. But no one writes corpora. They are not communicative events. They are not events at all. They are artificial objects created by a researcher. A text is meant to address us, to speak to us. Corpora don't speak to us, which is to say, they have no meaning in the usual sense of the word. But corpus, a literary corpus, neither it is a data set or a database. Rather, it is a large collection of texts, possibly the entire works of a particular author or representative body of writing on a particular subject area, which are normally available in their original texture and structure in digital format. A data set, on the other hand, is a collection of data of any kind, either from language or from any other domain for that matter. It can be images, articles, items, or similar other objects that can be collected and compiled in a desired tabulated manner. In simple terms, a data set is nothing but a collection of data in the table format. A database is a collection of information that is organized in a predefined pattern so that it can be easily accessed, managed, and updated by the data users or data generators. This quotation will be clarified at the end. The last slides is actually sources cited, so you will have the full citation of of the works from which these quotes come. So, a digital literary corpus is a typically large collection of texts that are born or reborn digital. So born or natively digital means that there was no previous version in an analog format such as handwritten, typescript, or print. This is what we more and more, or almost entirely, we as writers, as scholars, as researchers produce today. You may still use your pencil or pen to make notes on a piece of paper, but more likely you're going to use a personal computer or a mobile device to record thoughts and other ideas in a written form, or even in a recorded form. You may have ideas or thoughts as you go, and it may be more convenient for you to just to talk to your smartphone, and you may even have a software application that will convert that spoken message into a written text. Now, reborn digital, instead, is something for which there was a physical, a traditional format, but that format has been captured, scanned or photographed, or transcribed with manual keying, and therefore rendered in a digital form. Now we go to the next stage, which is how to create, how to build digital corpora. And the last bullet point in the previous slides already hints at one or two of the ways in which you can build this corpora. Digital capture or transcription are two, the most common, I would say, but there are more, and we'll see. So you can start by collecting digitally available text. You'll be surprised how many texts are already available in digital format. You just go on the Internet Archive, the Gutenberg Project, everything that is pretty much out of copyright, Google Books, is available. I personally, every time that I run into something that interests me, a text, or I search, and I search for the title, and I add the word PDF, and easily, Internet Archive, Project Gutenberg, and then I download it, and I have an incredible large library of classics, of text that probably I will never read on the screen, but they are very convenient because you can search them, and if they're classics of philosophy or literature, in translation, you can collect multiple translations and you can compare. So you can do a lot of things by searching this text, and they're very convenient. What is difficult to do is to read a 600-page philosophy text on your screen. So there are initiatives like Antitrust. I would say Antitrust, I put it for alphabetical reasons, it shows up as the first, but is probably the least likely because it works in a way that if your institution owns the copy of the book, you have access to the full text. But if your institution does not, member institution of Antitrust, does not own a copy of the book, did not provide a digitized version of the book, you can only view. So I find it particularly, not particularly useful and sometimes even frustrating. But Internet and Archive and Project Gutenberg are really full libraries in themselves. And then there is always private initiatives, people who scan and digitize some books and they made it available online, where in forms that make them really a little bit questionable in terms of copyright, because they are from authors that are recently died or they're maybe still alive. They're famous philosophers like Derrida. You find everything online, but clearly there is copyright there. But how do you know? Once you find this text online, and you can, if you're lucky, you can download the PDF, or you can download other formats. You still don't have the material that will allow you to do all the things that the Digital Humanities Project will do. You'll still have to manipulate this text and to bring them to a format that can be searched for Digital Humanities projects. Another way is by crawling the web. And I have no experience, but there is at least one tool which is presented as a corpus building tool. It's called WebBoot CAT, C-A-T. It's commercial, so it's not free, but there is a 30-day free trial. I did not try it, but you are welcome to do it and see what you can get. I think it all depends on the type of material that you're trying to collect, and where the parameters that you're using and the fields that you're searching. This is for you to try if you're interested. And then we get to the more common ways and the ways in which you have more direct control to create text that towards a digital corpus. So the most popular, I would say, the most widely used is by converting printed or manuscript text. That is by scanning. So what you need to do that, you need hardware, a scanner or camera, and a desktop computer. So this is what you see here. It is a $20,000 soy shell that is actually sitting in the technical services behind me, and it's used for the interlibrary loan request, for course reserve request, but you can scan photographs, and I scan large format newspapers from the 1890s and other things. And no, on the right is a computer. So you need hardware. More sophisticated systems use overhead digital camera instead of which is actually what's inside here. The top, it's the overhead has a camera inside, but no, sometimes no. High level rare books and manuscript libraries like the Beinecke here at Yale have a kind of a mounted structure with a digital camera operated by a photographer. Then you have a software which allows you to actually capture the image. And what you see here on the right, on the screen of the computer, is a software application that allows you to see the images that the camera captures and to do things like you can crop, you can zoom, you can do other things. The software will allow you to assign and to manipulate a file format, JPEG, the output that is desired could be JPEG, PNG, most likely TIFF, high resolution TIFF. You scan at 24-bit color, at least 400 or higher DPI. You can manipulate the file naming, and you can work on optimizing the images by cropping them, by deskewing, meaning if they are not straight, you make them straight, resizing, and then most software application today will implement optical character recognition, and we'll look at that in a second. But then you're generating large size files. You scan at those resolution that I mentioned, you're gonna get single images of single pages of a book, for example, that can be anywhere between 5 and 50 megabytes. So imagine the whole book. You're gonna be in the 2-digit megabytes or gigabytes. So you need storage space to keep these files. And then, of course, you need staff, which is labor. In this case, we use students, but you need somebody who knows what they're doing. And optical character recognition is this. A scanner or a camera generates an image file. I have to say that scanners for public use, as opposed to scanner for special collection and high-level conversion projects, public use scanners, so the scanner, we have 5 or 6 around the library here, are scanners that a student or a faculty member or researcher finds a book in the library or a journal, wants to scan a chapter, wants to scan an article, they do it themselves. These scanners are more limited, they're actually much cheaper too. They have a more limited software that generates by default PDF, already searchable PDF. because the purpose of this public scanner is to facilitate research. So a scholar or a student who wants a PDF that is searchable. In fact, these scanners, public scanners, usually don't provide TIFF as output because of the level of the type of software that they have. But no, scanner like the one that you saw in the picture that has the whole range, including PDF, the whole range of formats. But the image file is a non-machine readable facsimile. So it's a photographic reproduction of the original, but it's not machine readable. And machine readable, the concept of machine readable is at the very heart of anything that you do with a computer, whether it is a database or an online catalog or a digital humanities project. You have to generate materials that are machine readable, meaning that the computer application, a computer program can read. So in order to make the scanner or photograph textual document machine readable, OCR needs to be implemented. And OCR is the process of transforming the images of characters in a document to the equivalent ASCII code for those characters. And this is the Society of American Archivists definition. Now, with, let's say that you scan a document, you have a PDF. In the case of a PDF, what makes it actually readable is that underneath what you see, which is the photographic equivalent of the original, underneath there is a layer that you don't see, but is actually represented by the text. We're talking about literary text here. It is a text written in the format that is the TXT, is non-formatted, and you can extract that. Adobe Acrobat allows you to extract the TXT text. You will see that depending on the photographic, on the printing nature of the original document, the OCR software may have misunderstood some characters, and therefore your TXT document contains some typos, errors. The software may recognize the letter S, capital S, as a $sign, or it happens quite often with M, N's, W's. They either replace them with other characters, other letters of the alphabet, or with typographic signs that don't make any sense. So there is some proofreading that needs to be done. And so imagine a printed text from the 1700s. Typography changed enormously from the times of the first folio of Shakespeare until today, or until the 1960s, before the digital era started. So if you convert a printed text from the 16, 17, 1800s, you'll need to do heavy proofreading, assuming that you're able to obtain any significant result in terms of OCR. Needless to say, manuscripts are out of reach. OCR has become very sophisticated. OCR software has been very sophisticated in the last 10 years or so. Now, there are, if you look at common OCR software, especially Ambifying Reader, they have a list of languages that they can capture and convert. and it's quite extensive. Of course, most are in the Roman or Latin alphabet, whether it is Lithuanian or Spanish or English, but Cyrillic for Russian and Slavic languages. Chinese, they are pretty good. Arabic, of course, there's been an incredible push to develop OCR software capable of reading and converting Arabic after September 11, because of the massive research that is being focused on the Islamic and the Arabic world. What still is problematic is what is called Gothic fracture, which is the alphabet, which is a variation of the Roman alphabet that is being used for German text all the way to the beginning of the 20th century. But especially, if you deal with early Protestant printed material from Germany, Lutheran, etc., they are all very heavily. They are printed this very heavy fracture alphabet that makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to convert in terms of OCR. I don't know about Sanskrit. I don't know about native non-English Indian languages like Tamil or Southern languages, or even Devanagari. I assume there is not a problem with Devanagari script, but I have no experience. So these are four most common software application that allow you to implement OCR. They are commercial, except for the last one, Tesseract, which is free and you can download from GitHub. Now, once you have scanned and converted an OCR, you have to do some proofreading. And this is just, and for the reason that I mentioned before, that depending on the nature of the text, depending on the nature of the print, the OCR may not be entirely accurate. So this is a quotation from an article that specifically focuses on creating and analyzing literary corpora, and is describing what needs to be done in terms of proofreading a converted and OCR text. And the author mentions instead of just the word processor, meaning the spell check in Microsoft Word, for example, or an equivalent in another writing application. They recommend a specific text editor. And here are a few text editors or code editors that are available. I would say many are free, and some have limitations that are dealing with the operating system, meaning some are available for Windows and some are available for Mac, and they are mentioned here. So the things to consider is that the language compatibility. Most editors are designed for English and Latin Roman alphabet. So if you scan an OCR text in Kannada or in Gujarati, there may be some problems. I'm sure that in the Indian subcontinent, there's a lot of work being done to develop sophisticated OCR for native languages. Then there is a system compatibility. For example, Notepad, the first one, the one with the frog, as a logo is for Windows only. And that's because it's basically it's been developed out of the application that is built in with the operating system in Apple, which is Notepad. While the Mac version of Sublime Text, which is the last one, the S, the orange S on a black background, is compatible with models of Apple computers that have Apple Silicon processor that has been introduced in November 2020. So if you have a Mac that is from 2019, doesn't have Apple Silicon processor, it's not going to work. And then you have to consider proprietary versus freeware, and also what your specific needs and the specific need of your projects are. The other way of creating digital surrogates is by manually transcribing a text, which is called keying. And that's why I put the picture of the typewriter, because of the keyboard. And keying means exactly that. You type in what you read. So you have the physical document, and you have a computer, and you type in what you read. It's a manual process. It's more accurate, but also more labor intensive. I'm not sure about labor intensive, however, because think about all the things, all the needs that we listed for scanning. So hardware, software, you have somebody who actually does the work, then you have the OCR, you have to proofreading. So more labor intensive because it's very archaic as a form of creating a digital surrogate. You just type in the whole, typing in the whole research by Proust, or the whole Bible, or the whole Mahabharata. Now, how long does it take? But also, it's typically outsourced for that reason. I'm sure in India there are a lot of outsourcing companies that provide this kind of services. In China there are, but it means that typically it's done with one person or more than one person typing in the text, and then somebody else, typically not the same person, and typically not only one stage, goes over the text and compares it with the original. So there are at least 2 or 3 stages. The first one is transcription, the second and the third is proofreading. Once, just like with publishing, you have not so much anymore, and that's why you find typos in printed books, even books printed by very respectable academic publishers. But it used to be that after you turned in your manuscript, you had 1 or 2 or even 3 proofs to correct. So it's not much different from that. And it's something that is, if you deal with handwritten materials, manuscripts, that's the only way to create digital surrogates. As you can capture the original with a scanner, but it will remain a nice image. In order to be able to provide a text that is searchable, you have to transcribe it. So I want to, in the next couple of slides, I want to show you something that you deal with every day in your research, but you probably don't see it as as it is in practical terms, because you are focusing on the text itself and not on the format. So this is the same poem, which is a quatrain by Arvind Krishna Mehrotra, and I chose this one simply because it's short enough that it can stay, the whole text is visible on one page. And the first two formats that I'm showing you are what I call presentation formats. Presentation because that's the way that they are created to be made available online. The one on the left is a PDF. The one on the right is in HTML. The HTML version, so you access the text online, you find the PDF, you can download it. You have the HTML text. You can download it as PDF, or you can copy it and paste it. This is from I think it's a ProQuest, a large content provider that makes available online entire works of poets, including Indian poets. But this is not what you need to create a digital corpus. Then there are the behind the scenes formats. These are my definition. I call it behind the scene because that's typically what works underneath the PDF or the HTML. And I mentioned before the TXT as the underlying layer that under the image of the PDF makes the text searchable. Same poem in a TXT with most of the information is about the technical metadata, how you access the text, which is interesting for contextual reasons, not as poetry itself. If you're looking at the poetry, that's just a small amount. On the right is actually a XML version. XML is another formatting language like HTML. The difference is that HTML has a fixed number of tags. Tags is when what's written in red in brackets and identifies the type of content. So the head, you have the title, stanza. HTML, you don't see it here because this is the presentation version, but underneath there are the same structure. But the difference is that HTML has a fixed number defined by the application. In the case of XML, it's much more flexible because it also allows you to create your own tags. And I would say this is more very self-explanatory. A title is defined as a title. The stanza is actually a technical term for poetry, so it's very precise. Each line is identified with a letter L that stands for line. So, and then it closes the stanza and it closes the poem. Now, the last two formats, TXT and XML, are actually the formats that are needed for a corpus. Because the corpus will become alive with annotation. This is one quote: the practice of adding, what is annotation? Is the practice of adding interpretive linguistic information to a corpus. Now the red tags are not interpretive linguistic information, they are technical metadata information. Do you remember at the beginning the definition corpus, corpora, corpse? Corpus is a live body. A corpse is a dead body. The origin, curiously, is the same, etymologically speaking. But we can use the term corpse also in the case of our work with digital collection of text. I would say you can assemble large amount of text, digitized or in whatever format you need them, and then you park them somewhere, you don't do anything, and you cannot do anything because they are not properly annotated and they're not properly manipulated in ways that can be queried. So that I would call a corpse. And there are many corpses. You just put together a lot of information and you don't do anything with it. And what's the point of having the whole Shakespeare canon in TXT, maybe in one file? It certainly is not something that you can read or enjoy as literature. As Moretti said in the quotation that I showed you before, it's not a communicative item. It's just something that sits there waiting to be treated in ways that can be used for a digital humanities project. But if you don't do anything, if you don't create these conditions, that remains as a dead corpus, which is a corpse. Another definition of corpus annotation, a little bit more specific. For a corpus to be fully useful, I would say to be alive to potential users, it needs to be annotated. And there are three types of annotations. I would say this is a little bit limited compared to what you'll see in the next few slides, but is also clear. Or markup. A markup is actually what in the XML example, you saw it in brackets in red. That's a markup that can be inserted in a corpus. Structural markup, part of speech markup, and grammatical markup. You see that part of speech and grammatical refer to the linguistics origin of digital literary studies. And this is a more extensive definition and description of a corpus annotation. Structural markup provides descriptive information about the text, like a title, paragraph, etc., etc. Or can contain complete bibliographic citation for a written text or ethnographic information about the participant, their age and gender in a spoken dialogue. Within the actual spoken and written text themselves, additional structural markup can be included to indicate, for instance, paragraph boundaries in written text or overlapping segments of speech in spoken text. Part of speech markup is inserted by a software program called the tagger that automatically assigns a part of speech designation. For example, a noun, a verb, to every word in a corpus. Grammatical markup is inserted by a software program called a parser that assigns labels to grammatical structure beyond the level of the word. For example, phrases, clauses, etc. So we have the basic, here we have a list of basic types of corpus annotation. You have phonetic. In a spoken corpus, for example, adding information about how a word is spoken in a spoken corpus was pronounced. Prosodic annotation, adding information about prosodic features such as stress, intonation, or pauses. Then you have syntactic annotation. So it's adding information about how a given sentence is parsed in terms of syntactic analysis, like verb, subject, object, etc., into such units, such phrases and clauses. Stylistic annotation, adding information about speech and thought presentation, direct speech, indirect speech, free indirect speech, thought, etc. And lexical annotation, adding the identity of the lemma of each word or which word form in a text. For example, the base form of the word, such as would occur as a head word in a dictionary. For example, line has the lemma lie. And we are looking more closely now at the most typical and most common forms of annotation. POS is part of speech. This comes straight from linguistics. In corpus linguistics, part of speech tagging, POS tagging or post, also called grammatical tagging, is the process of marking up a word in a text corpus as corresponding to a particular part of speech based on both its definition and its context. A simplified form of this is commonly taught to school-age children in the definition of words as nouns, verbs, adjectives. So basically, POS tagging will allow you to identify each word based on its grammatical meaning. So nouns will be nouns, verbs will be identified as verbs. And this and a few next slides are basically the opening definition from Wikipedia articles that you can access by clicking on the links. Syntactic parsing, syntactic analysis is the process of analyzing a string of symbols, either in natural language, computer languages, or data structures, conforming to the rules of a formal grammar. The term parsing comes from Latin pars, orationis, meaning part of speech. So it breaks down a sentence or a text into its syntactical parts. So this is as an example of the same poem analyzed in terms of syntactical parsing. We will see these 2 or 3 letters acronyms, what they mean in the next slide. Then there's a semantic form of corpus annotation. It's adding information about the semantic category of words. Semantic means meaning, what they mean. This is actually very interesting. 2 or more words may have the same spelling. In this case, they are called homographs. For example, bear, cricket, or sow. So bear can be the animal, but bear can also be the verb to bear. Cricket is the insect, but is also the game. And sow is the female of the pig, but it's also the verb to sow. They may have the same pronunciation, in which case they are called homophones for new and new. And of course, depending on the way that the English language is spoken, even within the same country, these homophones can multiply. But they have different meanings and therefore belong to different semantic categories. So the semantic tagging will identify these words based on their meaning rather than their spelling or their pronunciation. Then there is a name entity recognition. This is something that is used a lot in also for commercial purposes, and is to identify named entities. Named entities may be proper names of people, or cities, or countries, or rivers, or organizational companies. Something that is defined as a specific category, both in terms of vocabulary and common usage. Then we move to the more abstract and more sophisticated, but also more probably usable in some ways for literary research, what is called sentiment analysis, or opinion mining, or emotion artificial intelligence. It's the use of natural language processing, text analysis, computational linguistics, and biometrics to systematically identify, extract, quantify, and study affective states and subjective information. So when you notice, we moved up from the library to the airport, from text analysis to biometrics. In some, definitely in the UK, I remember going through security and passport control, and I clearly realized that the officer who was behind the glass when I presented my passport was trained to look at me and to understand if I was true or if I was holding some secret, meaning if I was a librarian traveling from country to country, or a terrorist going to set up some kind of disaster. Security staff in airports in some countries are trained in these ways. It seems a little bit absurd, and it seems a little bit far-fetched because the expression can be misread in many ways. But this is part of what sentiment analysis is. In the case of a literary text, you can assign tags to specific words or sentences, or dialogues, segments of dialogues that, according to a number of categories that define the possible mental state of what is being described, of the person who is speaking in the dialogue. Anger, sadness, love, etc., compassion. So basic tagging, you can use Python. I think I know that some of you may have experience with Python to automatically detect text passages in direct discourse and mark them as such, harmonization of quotation marks, text instead of text, paragraph numbering, marking or passages in italics, marking of direct character discourse. The tagging, we were talking about labor intensive. Imagine you have a 400-page novel in XML format or in TXT format, and you need to apply tags, let's say even sentiment analysis tags, just to focus on one aspect, and one probably the more literary. It's going to take quite a while. So applications like Python will allow you to identify certain things quickly, automatically. So these are a number of taggers that are available, and each one is a link so you can explore. And we will see an example of what one of them does. These are tags. These are the acronyms defining specific tags and what they mean. Do you remember the example of syntactic parsing? You'll see some of those tags there. And this is the same January poem by Arvind Krishna Mehrotra, analyzed with one of the taggers, core NPL. NPL stands for Natural Processing Language, by the Stanford NLP group. You see that the first is analyzed in terms of parts of speech, and you can, of course, they are very small, but you can read on the top of each word the tag in a different color. They're color coded in addition to being with their own acronym. So, and then you can refer back to here, NNP proper noun. So January is identified as a proper noun. This is interesting because in English may be a proper noun. In Italian, January is a noun. It's not proper. Then you have gates, and let's go back, and an S, noun plural. That's correct. And no, you can go on and refer each of these tags to the table in the previous. Then the second example is the named entity recognition. Then we have the basic dependencies. This is a structural analysis and the enhanced dependence. This is getting very complicated, and it may also raise questions about your own investment in literature as a field of research, as a field of analysis. So I think it's very subjective. Some are naturally attracted to this approach. Some are not so interested. Some are even repulsed. But it's very important to understand that an entire field of literary studies has been moving and is moved in this direction. Now, online, this with Tools for Corpus Linguistic is actually the name of a website. I didn't put a hyperlink because you can just copy and paste it in your browser. And it provides software application for all of these, and it tells how many for each one, for all of these type of tagging activities and tools. These are actually tagging tools. A word of advice, as you go down each of these lists, you'll find that some of the links may be broken. Some of these tools are not available anymore. Some are not being maintained, but there's still a lot of them, and it includes the taggers that I listed in the previous slide, and it can be very interesting to explore what they are and what they do with concrete examples. A lot of them, like NPL, the core NPL, you can do a test online, so you can take any of document that you want, put it in the box, and then select the type of part of speech. You can select only one of these type of analysis or all of them, and you see the results. And that's how I obtained this slide. And these are the works cited, which brings me to the end of this conversation. And I believe that there may be time or the opportunity for questions. So I thank you for your attention. We went through 40 slides, I believe. And I hope that they've been of some interest to you. And I'm stop the sharing.
If there are any questions, please type them out since Dr. Krätli can't hear us. So,
Now, the problem is that if you have question, but I cannot hear you, we have to find an alternative way. Okay, so I'm reading aloud Roy's question, if it's okay. The question is, or the comment, thank you for the interesting presentation. Thank you, Roy. My question was related to CAMRA, K-A-M-R-A, India's first queer archival project. The largely analog archive has recently taken an initiative to make and digitize a catalog of its holdings. I wanted to know if cataloging should ideally be done along with the creation of a corpus, precede the corpus, or be built in tandem with the corpus at the same time. Yes. Can you hear me? Can you still hear me? Okay. Well, all right. Very good. So I would say catalog, the word catalog has a public connotation. So it can be an old car catalog, like a cabinet, you pull all the drawers with all the cards, or it can be an online public access catalog, an OPAC. But in both cases, is a public tool, is something that you create for somebody to consult and to access. So if that is part of your project, I would say definitely. If not, I would still want to have a master list of all that's the only way you can keep control and you can manage what you are digitizing. And your list will have all the information and probably more, but all the information that could go in a catalog, in a public catalog, but also all the information that will be helpful for you to keep track of what you're doing. I hope I answered your question. Very good. So there is a question from Indian writing in English. How do we distinguish between a data set, database, and a corpus? So I would just refer you to one of my first slides, that the one after the Moretti. And this is actually a book that is published in India, or not in India, it's published by the two authors. One of them is, you may even know the person, is a member of the, I think, computer science department at the University of Hyderabad. So I will refer you to that when in the slides that says it is not a database either, because a database is something that still can be used for other things, like the poem that we saw in HTML format from an online content provider that is pulled out of a database. But the database itself, to be able to serve the purpose of a digital project, digital humanities projects, needs to be no. If you are doing all these annotations, that's not in the database. You have to do it. The database does not need any kind of annotations. So the corpus involves, it can sit there and do nothing, but if you're doing a digital humanities project, you need to do some things to it in terms of tagging that will allow a certain line of research. But I think that the distinction in the slides would, and probably if you access the book, which is available in PDF, I downloaded it. You can read more around that topic in the chapter. You're welcome. It's unfortunate that we cannot, that we are forced to communicate by chat, at least in your case. I actually cannot write. No, now I can actually. Before I couldn't send a chat message. Now apparently the cursor works. But it would be nice to hear your voices too. Are any of you involved currently in the digital humanities project? I would be very much interested of hearing from you what you're doing, but we are not in the best condition to communicate unless you email me. And feel free to email me after this presentation is over. The project has my email address. I'll be happy to share. But I would be even more interested in hearing what you're doing and what your interests are, both in the literary field or in digital humanities. Okay, very good. Yep, very good. I will be available and happy. What I didn't mention is that I promised that we have 5 minutes. Are we okay in time, in terms of time? I could mention the project. So I've been working. This has nothing to do with digital humanities, but it could. This is, I realized, is a kind of approach to a literary material that could lead to a digital humanities project. I've been working on an analysis of anthologies of Indian poetry in English from 1947 until basically 2022, the last two that I've had. And to understand how anthologies of this kind contributed to the formation of a canon for Indian poetry in English, post-colonial Indian poetry in English, and what that means, what a canon means in these terms. So I collected either physically or as PDFs a number of anthologies, and from 1947 until 2022, and I am analyzing them. It basically is in two parts. Analyzing them, I break them down in their component. Who is the editor? Who is the publisher? what's the introduction, if they have an introduction, have a biographical, if their arrangement, if they're arranged alphabetical or chronologically or in an alternative criteria. And then the second part will be more a historical overview, how the idea of Indian poetry in English changed critically and in terms of ontologically through all these publications. So I realized that technically I could take one by one, take the table of contents and take the content itself, but the table of content, if it lists poets and poems, should be enough. Put them all in a TXT format or in XML format. So all these 50 plus table of contents, and then run some queries and see, with the idea of understanding over 75 years and how many anthologies, who are the poets that are mentioned the most, and even what are the poems that are mentioned the most, because there are poems that appear the same poem for the same poet, or the same poet is represented by the same poem, anthology after anthology. And then you can visualize this data and you see, no, this is the guy who appears 125 times, and this is the poem that appears the most, etc., etc. So this could be a very simple, actually, digital. It could be called the Digital Humanities Project, because you will need to use certain tools that are typically digital humanities tools. Whether I will go there or not is a different story. I think I could achieve the same results manually, meaning by counting. I have all the table of contents, and et cetera, but it could actually be done automatically in a computational form. Now it's 10 o'clock, so I don't want to keep you. I know that it's late, and if you don't have any more questions, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I hope to hear from you in the future. I definitely will keep you posted on my progress. Have a good evening and the rest of the week.
Atul, may I start?
Yes, Lavani, please do.
Yes. On behalf of the research scholars of the Department of English and IWE Online, I would like to thank Dr. Graziano Krätli for such a scintillating and enriching lecture. I would also like to thank some other people. I would like to thank the audience, not only in this lecture, but also in all previous lecture iterations. Thank you so much for your questions and your engaging participation. I would like to thank Pranay Urbani for tech support. Thank you so much, Pranay. I would also like to thank Dr. Pramod Kenayar and Dr. Anna Korean, our professors who were the project coordinators. Thank you, everyone else involved in this project. And with that, we sign off with Digital Humanities Theory and Praxis. Thank you so much.